It's a chaotic Gemini full moon. I'm not even going to do an intro. Let's just go. So this is a full moon taking place in Gemini at 4 degrees on Monday, the 27th. Thanksgiving has just passed, and depending on how you spent that national holiday, you are feeling all kinds of things as we lean into this full moon. Okay, so on Sunday, the 26th, the moon enters Gemini and promptly squares Saturn, as everything on the mutable axis has been doing. However, on that same day, we see the moon's ruler, Mercury, in Sagittarius, making a trine to the North Node in Aries. So the moon in Gemini wants to talk about something, and Saturn in Pisces is sort of slowing it down and maybe asking it to root into the emotion of the situation. Whatever that conflict is bringing up for us is connected to whatever Mercury is sort of seeing us moving toward in the North Node. So while it is a difficult aspect, it may be revealing to us maybe what we need to be talking about in order to get closer to that North Node in Aries journey of authenticity, of being real, of taking responsibility in wherever we are leading others and ourselves into. What's extra spicy is that the moon will then oppose Mars, which is at 1 degree of Sagittarius. So if anything, there's sort of a little T-square happening because Mars is still within orb of this square to Saturn, even though that square has happened. A positive spin on this might be that whatever was brought up in that square, which happened on Saturday before this new moon, is now being discussed, is now being worked out. We might be kind of interrogating this blockage as the moon in Gemini squares Saturn, and it might be trying to collect data about what we're going to do about this resistance or this blockage. But at the time that the moon opposes Mars, we may be a little riled up, we may be a little defensive, we may be a little aggressive, or we might be stirring the pot. Making things extra weird is that on the day of this full moon, its ruler, Mercury, then comes into square Neptune in Pisces. You know how we talk about Neptune. There's these ideas of perfection. We idealize and romanticize things. We want things to live up to whatever we've visualized in our mind, in our imagination. Mercury wants information. Mercury wants the data. Mercury is also in its sign of detriment, Sagittarius. If anything, Sagittarius and Pisces have way more in common. They are about these big picture things, visions, dreams, values, ideas of faith, our belief systems. So with these planets in square and with Mercury kind of out of its element, quite literally, while also ruling the full moon in its, in its sign, there may be just a lot going on. We might not know what's real. We might not know who to believe. We might really get caught up in kind of the gassing things up, blowing things out of proportion. The truth is that we don't really know what the truth is at this full moon. And this full moon is one that is seeking truth and information, or at least it's searching for the facts through which we can then sort of determine a collective truth. After the moon opposes the sun, it will then sextile Chiron. Maybe there's an element of, again, some sort of acknowledgement of what's not feeling great or what's aggravating, what's being triggered, some kind of moving through something that's been kind of sticking in our side a little bit. But we might be doing so in a way where we need to kind of suspend our need for truth or for facts or data and kind of lean into what we don't know at this time. The day after the full moon, the moon will then trine Venus and sextile the North Node, which again sort of shows us connecting with others outside of us, maybe finding some way to connect and gather in some sort of communal leaning into the unknown in ways that are somehow leading us toward whatever we're moving toward at this time. And all of this happens before the moon then comes in and squares Neptune. So it might be that connecting with others brings us even farther from some sort of single definition of what's going on. And really, we're possibly being challenged to accept many definitions. And I'm going to let y'all sit with that and figure out what that means for you, because wherever this is lighting up in your chart is going to be where we may be hungry for some sort of specific kind of information, and what we receive instead is a little bit less like provable or scientific and a little bit more spiritual and empathetic. So let's go ahead and pull some cards, get a look at what we might be looking at, see how we're going to navigate the fog of this time. I'll see you there.
Okay, so here we can see our sort of origin line in the Scorpio new moon, which we saw 2 weeks ago, and followed up with the Aquarius first quarter moon that we discussed last week. If you missed either of these, go ahead and take a moment, check out these narratives, meet us back here, and we'll dig in. Okay, here we go. So it is the full moon, and we are looking at the following prompts. And before I name those prompts, I'll remind you that if you want to pull for yourself and you want to join in, you can head to the description of this video to my website, where you will find a free PDF with all of these moon phase pulls. Okay, so for the full moon, we are asking about a situation culminating now. We are asking about how we can make space for this situation or revelation, or these many narratives with the square to Neptune. We are asking what we are able to celebrate in the light of this moon. And lastly, we are asking what we are able to prepare to release as this moon light begins to wane. Okay, so we'll pull these 4 cards and we'll weave them back into the narrative we've already been exploring. Okay. Okay. So, a situation that is culminating now is the star. Oh, we love the star. Okay, let's talk about that. So there's, we've talked a lot about authenticity. We've been talking a lot about, especially last week, kind of taking on the role of responsibility for kind of getting clear on what we want, not being sure that we could make room for all of that, figuring out whether we were in the company of other people with whom we could celebrate. And if not, then kind of getting clear on what that looks like for us. What do we want that 10 of Cups to bring to us, right? And with that 5 of Wands that we ended with last week, kind of thinking about like what we want to stand up and fight for, right? Okay, so the situation culminating now, we are tapping into our authentic selves. This comes after the energy of the Tower, where we've gone through a whole lot of like tumultuous energy, where we've we've talked this whole time about how Venus hanging out with the South Node, which is right in this sphere that we are in right now, being a period of deep release, of deep purging, finally getting rid of what no longer is playing a role in our lives that is authentic or really like fair for all parties, right? We've made a lot of sacrifices in our relationships. We've made a lot of sacrifices to be part of something with others. And we've been getting clear on where that might not be working out for us. So it's lovely to see the star here as this indication that we're reaching a place of experiencing what it feels like to live in this new sense, to live after this chaos, to emerge sort of from the rubble of what's been broken apart, what's been maybe destroyed, what's needed to be broken up into pieces and sort of sorted out, we are starting to understand what it feels like to be these new people, to embody this sort of this energy, this authenticity. This is very Aquarian energy, right? This is very like I no longer have to hide myself. I'm attuned to the environment around me and I know exactly what I'm doing here. So I love that for us. I love that even though we talked about not really knowing a singular truth, sort of needing to be open to many possibilities or needing to find truth of our own. And I think that's certainly something that we are moving through right now, especially as we shift out of the more common narratives that are part of our broader culture. We're figuring out the truth for ourselves. We're figuring out what is real for us. And that's allowing us to activate this deep sort of archetypal energy of being our the next iteration of our truest selves. Okay. How we can make space for this situation or revelation? Oh, well, to discover the truth for ourselves means likely some experience of pain as we separate from the truths that are no longer ours, the truths that we see others holding true to and that we can't support, right? As we step out into this authenticity, as we step out of the rubble of the tower, we have to leave certain things behind. And that does bring up grief. So we should mourn whatever comes up to be mourned at this time. We talked about some activity involving Chiron here, and there may be a need to really honor and just be with the feelings that come up as we recognize that we're sort of living in a new version of our truth. What we can celebrate in the light of this moon. Oh, isn't that a lovely like counterbalance to this Three of Swords? Whatever we are stepping into that is radically authentic, hence the Aquarian themes, radically authentic, right? We can't be held back by false narratives. We have to be able to kind of fly our freak flag and be our weird selves, even if no one else is ready to join us there. That means we separate from narratives that we thought were true, from situations that we thought would hold us in this authentic form, situations or groups or narratives where we thought that there would always be room for this authentic self, and maybe we're learning there's not. But what we can celebrate is that we still and maybe in a new way have connection to community. This is a card of celebration, so it's very meta to have this card here when we're talking about what we can celebrate. We have people who see us here. All right, even if there are people who don't want to meet us here. Last week's King of Pentacles, maybe not everyone's ready to kind of take responsibility for whatever it is they're part of. Maybe not everyone's ready to step into that role of being neutral, perhaps. And that's not what I mean about like the where we find ourselves in the world right now. But as people change around us, it's not about us. And we do need to take responsibility, King of Pentacles, for allowing people to find themselves, right? We can't hold people to what we need them to be for us. That's a Libra South Node story that we need to confront. So we're focusing on where there is room for us, where there are others who are ready to embrace and celebrate us as we are emerging at this time, even as we mourn and separate from those who don't or can't do that right now. Okay, what we can prepare to release in the light of this moon? Well, isn't this like a symbol of ultimate truth, right? The King of Swords is like the master of information. And I think this really points to everything we've said about what a Gemini full moon typically wants to embody. It wants to, think about this. We make end of the year lists where we like quantify and take inventory of everything that occurred during the year, right? We always have the like end of the year who passed, the celebrities who've passed, end of the year, here's all of the highlights of the news reels of all the events of the year. So as we do this at the end of 2023, as we do for every year, we will certainly realize that we don't all share the same idea of what truth looks like right now. There is a big divide that is deepening as we continue to move forward into the situations of the world that we are currently living in. So we are releasing the idea of one mastered truth. We are releasing the idea of there being a single perspective of what is and what is not. We are letting go of perhaps old systems of information that we have internalized that we are now ready to step out of. We recognize there is no singular truth, and therefore we are stepping out of a role of being someone who contains a singular truth, because that's not what's on the table right now. Whew, okay, this is some big stuff. This is some big energy. Let me know how this lands for you in the comments. If you enjoyed this, please like, share, subscribe. Next week, we'll talk about that third quarter moon in Virgo, and we'll be deep, deep in the Mercury retrograde shadow, and we'll talk all about what that moon's going to be asking of us while it's also squaring its ruler Mercury. Okay, or like in that orb of, and also deep in that space of Mercury's next retrograde material. Okay, thank you so much for tuning in.